Thank you for choosing to spend a few moments with me today. I am a physician who has walked alongside patients for over 40 years, particularly those entering the later seasons of life, where every story, every subtle shift in spirit leaves a profound imprint. Through decades of listening, observing, and witnessing the quiet realities of aging, I've come to understand that there are certain things everyone notices, but few ever say out loud. Not out of indifference, but out of love, a hesitation to cause pain to someone they care for deeply. These small habits, if left unchecked, can quietly erode the warmth, respect, and closeness that we've spent a lifetime building. They are not signs of failure, nor do they diminish the worth of a person. Rather, they are the gentle blind spots that naturally form as the years unfold, unless we remain attentive and open-hearted. Today, I invite you to join me in a spirit of reflection, not judgment, to look at these patterns not with harshness, but with compassion. Growing older with grace is not about clinging to who we once were, but about continuing to soften, to awaken, and to evolve, even as time writes its quiet lines upon us. Let these next moments be like a gentle mirror, offering us a way to remain deeply connected to ourselves, to our families, and to the world, through small but powerful choices. And if you are ready, let us begin this conversation together. One of the first signs, often too delicate for others to bring to your attention, is the quiet neglect of personal hygiene. It begins not with grand lapses, but with the small, almost imperceptible shifts: a shirt worn a day too long, hair left unbrushed in the hurriedness of a morning, fingernails growing just slightly too wild at the edges. A faint scent clings longer than it used to, and slowly, without anyone daring to mention it, the distance begins. You might not notice it in words, no one will say it outright, but you may feel it in how people begin to shorten their visits, step back during conversations, or avoid spontaneous embraces that once felt natural and warm. In youth and middle life, tending to our appearance often feels automatic, woven into the fabric of daily routine without much thought. But as we grow older, as energy wanes and the sharp edges of urgency soften, there can come a subtle shift, a feeling, perhaps, that such attentions no longer matter, that if the world no longer watches as closely, we're free to loosen our grip. And while there is a certain grace in letting go of vanity, there is a deeper danger in letting go of self-respect. Because personal hygiene is not, at its core, about appearances. It is about dignity, about the silent message we send to the world, and more importantly to ourselves, that we are still here, still present, still worthy of care. It is an unfortunate truth that when self-care diminishes, even those who love us most deeply can unconsciously begin to treat us differently. Without realizing it, they mirror back the energy we present. If we seem to say, "I no longer matter," through our appearance and presence, they too may start to handle us with a little less warmth, a little less reverence. It is not cruelty, it is human nature, responding to the subtle cues we give. And in this, we have more power than we sometimes realize. The good news, as simple as it sounds, is that restoring this part of ourselves does not require grand gestures. It is the fresh shirt thoughtfully chosen in the morning, the hair brushed back with care, the fingernails trimmed neatly, the subtle attention to freshness and order. These quiet acts do not simply improve how others see us, they restore how we see ourselves. They whisper a powerful message: I am still worthy of respect, still taking part in this world with intention and pride. And it is astonishing, truly, how these small gestures ripple outward. People will smile more readily. They will lean in closer without hesitation. Conversations will feel easier, more natural. Because energy, far more than words, is what people respond to first. And in the simple, mindful act of caring for our bodies, we also care for the space between ourselves and those we love. So if you notice, in the quiet honesty of your own reflection, that some part of this has slipped away, I urge you not to judge yourself harshly. Life wears heavily on all of us at times. But perhaps, with gentle patience, you can reclaim these small rituals, not out of vanity, but out of reverence for the beautiful life that still moves through you, for the simple but powerful truth that you are still here, still deserving, still luminous. Another habit that can quietly create distance, often without our realizing it, is speaking without the gentle filter that compassion provides. As the years pass and our patience for pretense thins, there can be a powerful urge to speak plainly, to call things as we see them, to believe that after so many decades of living, we have earned the right to voice our truths without hesitation. And indeed, there is wisdom in honesty, in shedding the heavy cloaks of false politeness. Yet honesty, when stripped of kindness, can harden into something sharp and wounding, not the clear light of truth, but the harsh glare of judgment. It happens subtly. A remark about someone's weight, said offhandedly, a comment on the way a child is being raised, offered without invitation, a teasing observation about someone's appearance or lifestyle, couched in the old familiar humor of earlier years. And though perhaps it feels harmless in the moment, even affectionate, you may notice the way laughter falters slightly, how eyes look away instead of meeting yours, how conversations with certain loved ones seem to shorten, cool, or grow more guarded over time. In truth, most people will not confront you when words land too heavily, especially the younger ones, your children, your grandchildren, your neighbors. They will simply retreat a little, choosing silence over the discomfort of explaining why something stung. They will love you still, but a part of themselves will hold back. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the bond that once felt effortless begins to fray at the edges. This change is not because you have lost your place in their lives. It is because the space between honesty and tenderness is sacred, and it requires care. Speaking the truth is vital, but wrapping that truth in empathy is what allows it to be heard without injury. It is not about suppressing what you see or feel. It is about asking yourself before the words are released into the air, whether they will build up or close them. A simple rule I have come to live by is this: if you would not want someone to say it to your grandchild, to your younger self in a more vulnerable moment, perhaps it is better left unsaid. Or, said differently, said with more love in its shaping. Because what people carry with them is not just what we said, but how we made them feel when we said it. There is no shame in realizing that over time the instinct for bluntness may have grown stronger than the instinct for grace. It is a sign of survival, of living in a world where sometimes softness felt like a luxury we could not afford. But now, in these years where relationships become more precious and fleeting, perhaps there is a calling back to a different kind of strength. The strength to speak carefully, to offer truth in a way that nourishes rather than wounds. And you may be surprised once you practice this shift how differently people respond. How they lean in when you speak rather than pulling away. How they seek your counsel not out of obligation, but because your words have become a refuge, wise, measured, and kind. In this way, you do not lose your voice, you magnify it. You become not just a speaker of truths, but a keeper of hearts, someone whose presence others find themselves drawn to, comforted by, grateful for. There is another habit, quiet yet profoundly corrosive, that I have witnessed time and again in the lives of those I have cared for. A habit that, if left unexamined, can drain the lightness from conversations and quietly build walls where once there were open doors. It is the tendency, often born from a lifetime of hard-won experience, to insist upon being right, to hold so tightly to one's view of the world that dialogue becomes less a dance and more a battle for position. And though the impulse may come from a place of certainty, even love, the desire to protect, to guide, to preserve what one knows to be true, it often lands as something very different, a weight that presses down upon those who come to us seeking, not instruction. I recall vividly a patient of mine, Mr. Aldridge, a man of towering intellect and sharp wit, who had spent his younger years commanding rooms, building companies, raising a family with an unshakable hand. In his prime, his decisiveness was his strength, It won him respect, admiration, even a certain kind of loyalty. But as he grew older, I began to see the shift that he himself could not. Conversations with his adult children grew shorter, more brittle. His grandchildren, once eager to sit at his knee and hear his stories, became hesitant, careful in his presence. During one visit, I watched as his daughter gently tried to explain a new career path she was considering, something unconventional, something that stirred her heart. Within minutes, Mr. Aldridge interrupted, correcting her understanding of the world, dismissing her hopes as impractical. She smiled, a tight, polite smile, and the room fell silent, heavy with the unspoken grief of not being heard. You see, when we cling to the need to be right, when every conversation becomes an arena to prove that we know better, that our way is the only way, we unwittingly push people away. They may stop challenging us not because they have been persuaded, but because they have grown weary. They may stop sharing not because they lack stories to tell, but because it is safer to say nothing at all. Over time, we find ourselves surrounded by quieter rooms, conversations filled with pleasantries rather than truths, and we wonder where the richness of connection has gone. And yet the remedy is not found in silence or passivity. It is found in humility. True wisdom, I have learned, and I have had the honor of witnessing it in some of the finest souls, is not proven by winning arguments, but by asking questions, by holding one's knowledge lightly, offering it with tenderness rather than force. It is found in the words, "Tell me more," rather than "let me tell you." It is in the willingness to entertain the idea that perhaps, just perhaps, the world has shifted in ways we have not fully seen, and that there is still so much left to learn. When we loosen our grip on being right, we do not lose our authority, we deepen it. We become safe places for our children, our grandchildren, our friends, to bring their uncertainties, their dreams, their doubts. We earn the kind of reverence that does not need to be demanded because it flows naturally from the respect and safety we have cultivated. In Mr. Aldridge's final months, I gently encouraged him to practice listening without correcting, to ask his granddaughter what she loved about her dreams rather than telling her why they might fail. And slowly, tenderly, I saw the light return to his relationships, not because he changed his opinions, but because he changed the way he held them, not as weapons, but as offerings. In the end, what people remember is not whether we were right. It is how we made them feel when they were most vulnerable, whether they left our presence feeling heard, honored, and strengthened, or small, silenced, and dismissed. And it is never too late, not even in the twilight years, to choose again, to trade the heavy armor of certainty for the open hands of humility, to become once more a place where love and learning flow freely. There is a quiet sadness I have witnessed many times in the hearts of older patients, a sadness they often do not fully understand, and it arises from the gradual distance that grows between them and the younger generations they love. One of the most common roots of that distance is not found in grand conflicts or in the natural changes of time, but in something far more subtle: the steady, almost habitual criticism of the youth. What begins as a simple observation, a sigh over young people glued to their phones, a shaking of the head at their choices in careers, in relationships, in values, over time hardens into a narrative, spoken aloud again and again. They don't know anything these days. They're too soft, too entitled. Back in my day, we knew the value of hard work. At first, it seems harmless, perhaps even justified. After all, you have lived through wars, economic collapses, profound cultural shifts. Your survival is a testament to endurance, to resilience built in harsher times. And it is natural to feel the ground shift uneasily underfoot when the values you once built your life upon seem to be questioned or replaced. But what I have seen, again and again, is that this pattern of criticism does not bring understanding or respect. It does not close the gap between generations. It widens it. I remember Mrs. Halverson, a patient of mine who had once been the heart of her large, boisterous family. Her home was the place everyone gathered, Children, grandchildren, neighbors, friends, all drawn to the warmth of her cooking, her laughter, her open arms. But in the later years of her life, she grew restless, disapproving of the world unfolding around her. She would mutter sharp comments about her grandchildren's choices, dismiss their dreams as unrealistic, ridicule their sensitivity to causes she found trivial. "They wouldn't have lasted a day in my time," she would say, half laughing, not noticing how their faces tightened, how visits grew shorter, how the once frequent phone calls dwindled into silence. She did not intend to wound them, she loved them fiercely, but her constant need to compare, to diminish, quietly told them that who they were was not enough, that their struggles were less real, their victories less hard-earned. And so they pulled away, not out of rebellion but out of self-protection. They stopped sharing the tender parts of their lives because they no longer felt safe to do so. I watched Mrs. Halverson weep one afternoon in my office, unable to understand why her house had grown so quiet, why Christmas mornings once filled with chaos and laughter now felt so orderly, so hollow. You see, when we consistently frame the younger generation through a lens of deficiency, when every story they live is measured against the yardstick of our past, we are not teaching them, we are rejecting them. Even if we do not mean to, we are telling them that their world is less than ours, that their choices are wrong, before we have even listened to the reasons behind them. And in doing so, we forfeit the extraordinary opportunity to be part of their unfolding stories, to learn as much from them as they might learn from us. The truth is, every generation believes the one that follows has lost something vital, and yet humanity endures, grows, transforms. What looks like weakness to one generation often turns out, in time, to be evolution. A softening where once there was only hardness, a valuing of mental health where once there was only stoicism, a striving for justice where once there was only survival. And if we can step back from judgment, if we can choose curiosity over criticism, we might find that these new ways are not a betrayal of the past, but a tribute to it, built on the very foundation of courage and sacrifice that we laid. What younger people crave from their elders is not lectures but listening, not correction but connection. They yearn to be seen not as inadequate, but as brave in their own right, navigating a world we ourselves did not have to face. When we open our hearts to their experiences, when we choose to ask, "What is it like to be young today?" instead of saying, "You'll never understand what we went through," we create bridges instead of walls. And I can tell you, because I have seen it, that when an elder chooses to listen with openness, to celebrate the differences rather than mourn them, something beautiful happens. The young come back. They seek you out, not because they must, but because they want to. They sit at your side, not in duty, but in genuine affection. And in those moments we are given the greatest gift aging can offer, not just the honor of looking back on a life well lived, but the joy of seeing it ripple forward, carried onward in the hearts of those who come after us. Another subtle but deeply impactful habit I have seen cause unexpected distance between generations is the failure to adapt to modern forms of courtesy, small unspoken social agreements that, though different from those we grew up with, have become the fabric of shared life today. It is easy to dismiss these changes as unnecessary or overly sensitive. After all, many of us remember a time when conversations were louder, public spaces less tightly bound by invisible rules. But the reality is, society has shifted. Expectations of public behavior have softened, quieted, and failing to notice or honor that shift can send a message unintended but clear that we are no longer paying attention to the world as it is. I remember a dear patient of mine, Mr. Franklin, a vibrant man well into his late 70s who had an infectious laugh and a voice that could carry across any room without effort. In the earlier days of his retirement, he loved to spend mornings at the local coffee shop, reading the newspaper, greeting everyone who passed by. But as smartphones became common and the culture of public spaces shifted toward a quieter, more personal atmosphere, Mr. Franklin struggled to adjust. He would take phone calls at his table, speaking in his usual booming voice, recounting every detail of his day to his son, his doctor, or anyone who happened to call. People would glance up from their laptops, lower their voices to each other, shuffle awkwardly in their seats. No one ever confronted him. No one ever scolded or asked him to lower his tone. Instead, they quietly moved further away. Over time, the greetings became fewer, the smiles tighter, and eventually Mr. Franklin found himself sitting alone, puzzled and saddened, wondering why the place that had once felt like an extension of his living room now seemed colder, less welcoming. It was not malice that pushed people away. It was discomfort. In a world where technology allows for constant communication, public spaces have become, in a sense, shared sanctuaries, places where people expect a certain level of consideration, a certain awareness of how personal behavior affects the collective atmosphere. Speaking loudly on the phone, playing videos without headphones, standing too closely in lines. These small breaches of modern etiquette are not seen as eccentricities. They are experienced as disruptions, and because confrontation is itself uncomfortable for many, the response is often not direct correction, but silent withdrawal. For many older adults, this shift feels unnecessary, even absurd. After all, should we not be free to live as we always have? But the truth is, honoring the social customs of the present is not about surrendering our freedom. It is about honoring the shared spaces we inhabit with others. It is a form of respect, not for arbitrary rules, but for the experience of the people around us. And it is one of the quiet ways we continue to say, even in old age, I see you, I care about how my presence affects you. When I finally spoke with Mr. Franklin about what I had observed, he was at first defensive, even hurt. Why should I have to change, he asked, the frustration raw in his voice. But as we talked, and as he allowed himself to reflect without pride getting in the way, he realized that the goal was not to silence himself or to become invisible. It was to remain connected, to move through the world in a way that invited others closer, not caused them to retreat. In the months that followed, I saw a subtle but beautiful transformation. Mr. Franklin began taking his calls outside when possible. He lowered his voice inside the cafe. He noticed when someone nearby seemed disturbed and adjusted without being asked. And slowly, the warmth returned, the smiles, the casual conversations, the invitations to sit and stay a little longer. Modern etiquette, at its heart, is not about criticism or conformity. It is about kindness. It is about choosing to be mindful, to understand that the world changes and that adapting, even in small, seemingly trivial ways, is a gesture of love. Not just love for others, but love for life itself. A willingness to keep participating fully and generously in the beautiful, evolving dance of human connection. And in doing so, we show not only that we have lived long, but that we have lived wisely. As we reach the end of our time together today, I invite you to pause for a moment, not with judgment, not with regret, but with the quiet dignity that comes from self-awareness. What we have spoken of here are not faults to be condemned, but human tendencies that settle in when we are not looking, when the years gather gently around us and comfort turns into habit. There is no shame in recognizing them. There is only strength in choosing to see more clearly and to love more deeply because of what we now understand. Aging, after all, is not the end of growth. It is its finest hour. It is the season when the soul, if we allow it, softens rather than hardens, listens rather than lectures, adapts rather than resists. The true grace of these later years lies not in holding on to what once was, but in moving forward with open hands, with a spirit still curious, still humble, still capable of wonder. Remember, the small shifts we make now, in how we speak, how we listen, how we move through the world, can mend bridges we did not know were fraying, can breathe new life into relationships that have grown quiet, can remind those around us that the beauty of our presence is not only in what we have lived through, but in how we continue to show up today. You have not outlived your ability to inspire, to uplift, to be a source of gentle light in a sometimes weary world. Every day is an invitation to carry yourself with a dignity that welcomes others, to offer your wisdom wrapped in kindness, and to leave a legacy of connection, not separation. Thank you for allowing me to walk this reflection with you. May you move forward with tenderness for yourself and for others, and may the days ahead be filled with the kind of quiet strength that only a life fully lived can offer.